September 14, 1943. The transport ship cuts through the fog of San Francisco Bay, carrying its unusual cargo toward Angel Island. Among the prisoners aboard is Greta Müller, 26 years old, captured 3 months earlier during the Allied campaign in Bizerte, North Africa. Her hands grip the ship's railing as the California coastline materializes through the mist. Greta has spent the entire voyage preparing herself for what comes next. The stories circulate endlessly among the prisoners. Some speak of brutal labor camps in the Nevada desert. Others whisper about factory work in conditions barely better than the concentration camps back home. She expects punishment. She expects hardship. What she doesn't expect is what waits for her on American soil. The processing at Fort McDowell moves with military efficiency. Guards with rifles stand watch, but their posture lacks the tension Greta has grown accustomed to. No shouting, no violence, just paperwork and lines of confused prisoners trying to understand instructions in a language most of them don't speak. When her name is called, Greta approaches the distribution desk. An American sergeant hands her a piece of paper. 3 words are typed in English: Vineyard work detail. Below that, an address in Napa Valley. She stares at the paper, turning it over as if expecting further explanation on the back. There is none. Behind her, Sofia Rossi, an Italian prisoner she befriended on the voyage, receives a similar assignment. Sofia's face twists with contempt as she reads her paper. Vineyards, Sofia mutters in German, one of the few languages they share. They mock us, making us work in wine country while our families starve. Greta says nothing. She folds the paper carefully and places it in her pocket. In 3 months of captivity, she has learned that assumptions lead to disappointment. Better to wait and see what reality brings. But as she boards the truck that will carry them north to Napa Valley, one thought circles through her mind like a vulture. What kind of punishment involves vineyards? The truck winds through rolling hills covered in ordered rows of grapevines. It's late afternoon when they arrive at the Croft Vineyard, and the September sun paints everything gold. Greta has never seen anything like this landscape. Even before the war, Germany had nothing comparable to these endless slopes of cultivation. William Croft meets them at the entrance. He's 63 years old, with weathered skin that speaks of decades under the California sun. His grandfather planted the first vines on this land in 1879. He shakes hands with each prisoner as they step off the truck, introducing himself in careful, slow English that assumes they understand little. The accommodations surprise Greta more than anything else so far. The converted farmhouse has individual rooms, each with a real bed, a small desk, and a window overlooking the vineyards. There's a communal kitchen stocked with food, a bathroom with running water. Sofia walks through the space as if searching for the trap, for the hidden punishment that must surely exist. This cannot be real, Sofia says that first evening. Tomorrow, they will move us to the real camp. But tomorrow brings only work. The first morning, Greta wakes before dawn to the sound of a bell. She dresses in the work clothes provided, heavy canvas pants and a thick shirt, and joins the others outside. Thomas Chen, the vineyard manager, a second-generation Chinese-American, demonstrates the proper technique for harvesting grapes. His movements are precise, almost reverent. He shows them how to hold the scissors, where to cut, how to handle the fruit without bruising it. These grapes, he explains in heavily accented English, speaking slowly so they might understand, are Cabernet Sauvignon. They must be perfect, you understand. Perfect. The work is physically demanding. By midday, Greta's hands cramp from the repetitive cutting motion. Her back aches from bending over the vines. But it isn't cruel. It isn't punishment. It's simply work, the kind of work any seasonal laborer might do. At noon, they break for lunch. Greta expects watery soup and stale bread, the standard rations of captivity. Instead, the vineyard kitchen staff brings sandwiches filled with roast beef and cheese, fresh fruit and cold lemonade. She holds the sandwich, staring at it as if it might vanish. "Eat," Thomas Chen says, sitting on a barrel nearby with his own lunch. "You need strength for afternoon work." Greta takes a bite. The bread is fresh. The meat is real. She has not eaten this well since before her deployment to Africa. That evening, returning to the farmhouse, exhausted but fed, Greta sits on her bed and tries to process the day. She came here expecting to be broken by labor, to be punished for her role in the war. Instead, she spent the day learning a craft, eating well, and sleeping in a real bed. She pulls out the paper from her pocket, reading those 3 words again. Vineyard work detail. What kind of war is this? The routine establishes itself over the following weeks. Wake before dawn, work until midday, break for lunch, work until evening. The harvest season demands long hours, and every grape must be picked at the precise moment of ripeness. Thomas Chen walks the rows constantly, checking the fruit, making decisions about which sections to harvest each day. Greta begins to understand that wine is not simply alcohol, it's agriculture, chemistry, timing, and art combined. Each variety of grape requires different handling. The Cabernet Sauvignon they're harvesting now will age for years before being bottled. The Chardonnay in the adjacent section will be processed differently entirely. Thomas takes time to explain these things, speaking in simple English and using gestures when words fail. Greta's understanding of the language improves rapidly out of necessity. She learns the vocabulary of viticulture before she learns how to order food in a restaurant. The physical labor takes its toll. Her hands develop calluses. Her shoulders grow stronger. The softness of her pre-war life disappears under the California sun. But there's a satisfaction in the work that surprises her. At the end of each day, she can see what she's accomplished, measured in bins of harvested grapes and rows of tended vines. The other prisoners respond differently. Some, or like Sophia, remain bitter and suspicious, convinced that this treatment is temporary, a facade that will crumble to reveal the true cruelty beneath. Others embrace the work with the desperate energy of people who have found unexpected mercy in a merciless time. In early October, Greta writes her first letter home. She sits at the small desk in her room, struggling to find words that her mother will believe. "Dear Mama," she writes in German, knowing the letter will be read and censored by authorities on both sides. "I am well and working on a vineyard in California. The work is hard but fair. I am safe and adequately fed. I think of you and Papa every day. I hope this war ends soon so we can be together again. Your daughter, Greta." She doesn't mention the roast beef sandwiches or the comfortable bed. Those details seem too fantastical, too likely to be dismissed as prisoner propaganda or delusion. But as she seals the envelope, she realizes she's not lying. She is well. The work is hard but fair. And for the first time since her capture, she allows herself to feel something other than fear or resignation. She feels curious about what comes next. December brings the first rains to Napa Valley and the end of the harvest season. The vines, stripped of their fruit, stand in stark rows across the hills, preparing for winter dormancy. The pace of work slows. Now the prisoners focus on maintenance, repairing trellises, pruning the vines, preparing equipment for the next season. The invitation arrives on a cold Wednesday morning. Antonio Benedetti, owner of a local Italian restaurant, has extended an offer to several prisoners from the vineyard to join his family for dinner. William Croft delivers the invitation personally, watching Greta's face as she reads it. The Benedettis immigrated from Piedmont in 1911, Croft explains. Antonio's family has been making wine in Italy for centuries. He understands what it's like to be far from home. Greta accepts, though suspicion still colors her response. She has learned that Americans can be kind, but she hasn't yet understood why. The Benedetti home sits on the outskirts of Napa, a modest house with a large garden. Antonio greets them at the door, his accent thick with Italian vowels that make his English nearly incomprehensible. His wife, Rosa, speaks even less English but communicates through smiles and gestures that transcend language. The dining table groans under the weight of food: homemade pasta with meat sauce, roasted chicken with herbs, fresh bread still warm from the oven, vegetables from their garden, preserved and prepared with the expertise of generations. Wine, of course, from Antonio's own small production. There are 8 people at the table: the Benedetti family, 3 prisoners from the vineyard including Greta and Sophia, and a neighbor who fought in the First World War. The conversation flows in a mixture of languages, English, Italian, and German, blending into a strange but functional dialogue. Antonio raises his glass midway through the meal. His son, Marco, translates his words into English. My father says that wine has been bringing enemies together since ancient times. The Romans shared wine with their conquered peoples. It's a gesture of peace, of shared humanity. Tonight we share not because we are enemies or allies, but because we are all people far from where we began. Greta drinks. The wine is good, though not as refined as what they produce at Croft Vineyard. But the sentiment behind it makes it taste better than any vintage. As the evening progresses, Rosa brings out photographs. Her brother still lives in Italy, in a village near Turin. She hasn't heard from him in 2 years. Antonio's cousin fought for the Italian army before Italy's surrender. They don't know if he's alive or dead. War, Antonio says, his English breaking through for a moment of clarity, makes prisoners of everyone. Some in camps, some in their own homes, waiting for news that never comes. The words settle over the table like snow. Greta thinks of her own mother, waiting in a small German town for letters that arrive erratically, if at all. She thinks of the guilt she carries, the strange shame of being well-fed and safe while Europe burns. Sophia, sitting beside her, speaks quietly in German. I hate that I'm grateful to be here. I hate that I feel lucky when my brothers are fighting and dying. Greta understands exactly what she means. They return to the vineyard late that night, full of food and wine and confused emotions. Greta lies in her bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the evening in her mind. The Benedetti family's kindness wasn't strategic or conditional. It was simply human. And that somehow makes everything more complicated. October fades into November. The rains intensify, turning the soil between the vine rows to mud. The work shifts from maintenance to planning. William Croft holds meetings with Thomas Chen, discussing which sections of the vineyard need replanting, which varieties are thriving and which should be replaced. One morning, Croft calls Greta to his office, a small room in the main house filled with ledgers and wine bottles. She enters nervously, uncertain what this summons means. Croft gestures to a chair. Sit, please. She sits. Thomas tells me you're learning quickly. Croft begins. He says you ask good questions and remember the answers. Says you understand the vines better than workers who've been here for years. Greta nods, unsure how to respond. The harvest is over, but the work isn't, Croft continues. Viticulture is a year-round commitment. Winter pruning, spring training, summer management, fall harvest. Each season requires different knowledge, different skills. He pauses, pouring 2 glasses of wine from an open bottle on his desk. He slides one across to Greta. I'm offering you a position, not as a prisoner, but as an apprentice. You'll continue living here, continue working, but you'll learn the full cycle of the vineyard. Thomas will teach you everything he knows. In exchange, you'll help train the other workers when the next harvest season arrives. Greta stares at the wine glass. The prisoner of war convention prohibits forcing prisoners to work on military projects, but agricultural labor is permitted. She knows this, but what Croft is offering transcends the technical definitions of the convention. He's offering her a future. What happens when the war ends? She asks, her English slow but clear. Croft shrugs. That depends. If Germany wins a carré, which seems unlikely at this point, you'll be repatriated as a victor. If Germany loses, you'll be repatriated as a defeated soldier. Either way, you'll go home. And if I don't want to go home? The question surprises even Greta herself. She hasn't allowed herself to think that thought consciously until this moment, but now, spoken aloud, it becomes real. Croft leans back in his chair, studying her face. Then we'll figure something out. California needs good winemakers. The industry is growing. After Prohibition nearly destroyed us, we're rebuilding. People with knowledge and dedication will be in demand. He raises his glass. Think about it. You don't need to decide today. But Greta has already decided. She lifts her glass and touches it to his. I'll stay. The word feels like treason and liberation in equal measure. Winter in Napa Valley is mild compared to German winters, but it still requires adjustment. The vines stand bare and dormant, their gnarled trunks and branches looking almost dead until you learn to see the life waiting beneath the bark. Thomas Chen teaches Greta the art of pruning, how to cut away the previous year's growth to shape the vine for maximum productivity in the coming season. Each cut matters, Thomas explains, demonstrating on a mature Cabernet vine. Cut too much, the vine produces less fruit. Cut too little, the fruit lacks concentration. You must understand what the vine can support. Greta learns to read the vines like text, understanding their language of buds and nodes and canes. She learns which cuts encourage growth and which limit it. She learns that viticulture is not simply farming, but a conversation between human intention and natural resilience. By January 1944, word reaches the vineyard that the Allied invasion of Italy continues to advance. Sophia receives news that her hometown has been liberated. She should be happy, but instead she weeps. Knowing liberation means her family has seen the full devastation of war up close, Greta receives no news from Germany. Mail service has become unreliable, and she doesn't know if her letters are reaching home or if her mother's replies are simply lost somewhere in the chaos of global conflict. In February, an unexpected visitor arrives at the vineyard. Robert Mondavi, a rising figure in California wine industry, comes to discuss purchasing some of Croft's surplus barrels. Greta is working in the barrel room when he arrives, examining the oak containers for any signs of leakage or damage. Mondavi watches her work with interest. "You're thorough," he comments. "Bad barrels ruin good wine," Greta replies in her improving English. True enough. He introduces himself, shaking her hand with the casual confidence of someone who sees only competence, not categories like prisoner or enemy. "How long have you been working with wine?" 6 months. "And before that?" "I was a student, philosophy and literature." Mondavi laughs. A wine is both of those things, actually. Philosophy in how we think about quality and tradition, literature in how we tell the story of each vintage. He turns to Croft, who has joined them. "You're training her properly. Thomas Chen is the best teacher in the valley. She's learning from the best." Over the following hour, as Croft and Mondavi discuss business, Greta continues her work, but listens carefully. Mondavi speaks passionately about the future of California wine, about how the region could compete with the great wine-producing areas of Europe if only American winemakers would commit to quality over quantity. "After the war," Mondavi says, "everything will change. Europe will need to rebuild. That creates opportunity for us here, if we're smart about it." The phrase "after the war" echoes in Greta's mind for days afterward. She has stopped thinking of her life in terms of before and after the war. Instead, she thinks in terms of harvests and seasons, cycles that continue regardless of human conflict. In March, spring arrives with an explosion of green. The vines wake from dormancy, pushing out tiny shoots that will become the next season's growth. Greta works alongside Thomas and the other permanent vineyard staff, positioning the new shoots on the trellis wires, removing excess growth to focus the vine's energy. The prisoners who came with her are still present, but their numbers have changed. Some have been transferred to other work assignments. New prisoners have arrived, mostly Italian now, as American forces capture more territory in Europe. Greta finds herself in the strange position of teaching newcomers, showing them techniques she learned only months ago. Sophia approaches her one evening as they prepare dinner in the communal kitchen. "You've changed," Sophia observes. "You move differently now, like you belong here." Greta considers this. "Maybe I do." "Your family is in Germany." "Yes." "Mine is in Italy. When the war ends, I'm going home." "I know. But you're not." It isn't a question. Greta doesn't answer, because Sophia already understands the truth. Somewhere between September and March, nay, between arrival and spring, Greta has made a choice that can't be unmade. She has allowed herself to imagine a future that doesn't involve return, that doesn't require going backward to go forward. That night, she writes another letter to her mother. This one is harder. "Dear Mama, the vineyard where I work is beautiful. I am learning a craft that requires patience and attention, qualities I never knew I possessed. The people here have been kind beyond what I deserve. When this war ends, I don't know what my path will be, but I want you to know that I am safe. I am learning, and I am thinking of what comes next. I hope you can understand, even if I don't fully understand myself yet. Your daughter, Greta." She doesn't mail the letter immediately. It sits on her desk for 3 days before she finally seals it, and gives it to Croft to post. Even then, she's not sure her mother will ever receive it, or if received, will understand what Greta is truly trying to say. The war in Europe ends on May 8, 1945. News reaches the Vineyard via radio, and the American workers celebrate with restrained joy, aware that their victory means defeat for the prisoners among them. Greta stands in the vineyard during the announcement, hands buried in soil as she replants a section of rootstock, and feels nothing she expected to feel. No relief, no grief, just a strange sense of transition, like the moment between seasons when winter hasn't quite released its grip, but spring is already pushing through. William Croft gathers the prisoners that evening. His expression is serious, but not unkind. The war is over, he tells them. As the repatriation process will begin soon, you'll be sent to processing centers and eventually returned to Europe. For most of you, this will happen within months. He pauses, looking directly at Greta. For those who wish to stay, there may be options. I can't promise anything, but I can make inquiries. The United States will need immigrants to help rebuild what the war destroyed, both here and abroad. People with skills will be valuable. 2 weeks later, Croft calls Greta to his office again. This time, a lawyer is present, a man from San Francisco who specializes in immigration law. It's complicated, the lawyer explains, but possible. The government is developing programs for displaced persons, for people whose homes have been destroyed or who have special skills America needs. Wine production falls under agricultural expertise, which is a priority category. He lays out papers on Croft's desk, forms, applications, affidavits. Mr. Croft has agreed to sponsor you for permanent residency. You'll need to demonstrate continuous employment, good character, and intent to contribute to American society. Given your situation, it will take time, perhaps 2 years before your status is fully resolved. But it can be done. Greta reads through the papers, understanding about half of the legal language. The words that matter are clear enough: opportunity, residency, future. What about my mother? She asks. Once you have permanent residency, you can petition for family reunification. It's a long process, but it's possible. Greta signs the papers. Her handwriting looks strange on the American forms, foreign in every sense. By July, most of the other prisoners have been repatriated. Sophia leaves on a transport ship bound for Italy, embracing Greta before she goes. "You're crazy," Sophia says, but she's smiling. "Staying in the country that held you prisoner." "They didn't hold me prisoner," Greta replies. "They gave me a choice." Same thing from a certain perspective. Maybe, but the choice makes all the difference. Sophia's departure leaves Greta as the last remaining prisoner at the Vineyard, though that designation becomes meaningless as summer progresses. She receives official documentation changing her status from prisoner of war to displaced person with employment authorization. The change is technical, bureaucratic, but it feels profound. In August, William Croft makes another offer. He's getting older, and his children have no interest in continuing the vineyard. He proposes a partnership. Greta will manage operations under Thomas Chen's continued guidance, learning the business side of wine production alongside the agricultural aspects. Eventually, she could purchase an ownership stake. "I won't live forever," Croft says bluntly. "The vineyard needs someone who understands it, who cares about quality. You could be that person." The harvest of 1945 is the first where Greta works not as a prisoner or apprentice, but as assistant manager. She coordinates the picking crews, makes decisions about which sections to harvest when, works alongside Thomas Chen to evaluate the fruit quality. The responsibility is enormous and terrifying and exhilarating. By October, as the harvest concludes, she has been on American soil for 2 years. She speaks English fluently now, though with an accent she knows will never fully disappear. She understands the complete cycle of the vine, from winter dormancy through spring growth, summer management, and fall harvest. She knows how to evaluate wine quality by taste and smell, how to manage fermentation, how to care for aging barrels. She receives a letter from her mother in November, the first communication in over a year. The envelope is thin, the paper inside fragile. Her mother's handwriting is shakier than Greta remembers, but the words are clear. My darling daughter, I received your letters, all of them, eventually, delivered in a bundle after the war ended. I have read them many times, trying to understand the life you describe. It sounds like something from a dream, beautiful and strange. Germany is devastated, my dear. How a town survived, but everything is broken, hungry, cold. I don't know what the future holds for us here. If you have found a place where you can build something, where you can live without fear and hunger, then you should stay. Don't come back to this destruction out of obligation to me. I want you to live, truly live. That is what a mother wants for her daughter. Write to me about the grapes and the sunshine. Let me imagine a world that isn't this one. With all my love, Mama. Greta reads the letter 3 times before she allows herself to cry. Not from sadness, but from the complex relief of having permission she didn't realize she needed. In December 1945, she makes her first wine. It's a small batch, experimental, from grapes selected from a section of the vineyard she personally managed. Thomas Chen guides her through the process, but the decisions are hers. The blend, the fermentation temperature, the choice of barrels. It will age for 2 years before being bottled, and several more before it's ready to drink. You won't know if you succeeded until 1948 or 1949, Thomas tells her. That's the nature of wine. Patience. Greta understands patience now. She has learned it from the vines, from the seasons, from the long process of becoming someone new while remaining herself. On Christmas Eve, the Benedetti family invites her to dinner again. This time she arrives not as a prisoner, but as a neighbor, a fellow winemaker, a member of the community. Antonio's brother has returned from the war, alive though changed. They drink wine and tell stories, and Greta contributes her own, no longer an observer, but a participant. As 1946 begins, Greta Müller stands in the vineyard at dawn, watching the fog lift from the valley. She is 28 years old. She is a displaced person, a former prisoner of war, a student of viticulture, an assistant vineyard manager, and a future winemaker. She is all of these things and none of them, defined not by categories but by choices. Behind her, the dormant vines wait for spring. Ahead of her, years of work and growth and harvest. Above her, the California sky, impossibly blue, promising nothing except the opportunity to try. She thinks about the girl who stepped off the transport ship at Angel Island 28 months ago, expecting punishment and hardship. She wonders what that girl would think of where she's standing now. Then she stops wondering and gets to work. The vines need pruning, and spring will arrive whether she's ready or not. The beautiful thing about viticulture, she has learned, is that the work continues regardless of doubt or certainty, war or peace, past or future. You tend the vines, you harvest the grapes, you make the wine, and slowly, season by season, you become the person you were meant to be all along.